Okay, we're live. Okay, we're live, guys. What's up? John Sentes here, Cutternation podcast number 70. The streak continues. I'm surprised we have made it this far, but I'm pumped. Cass Kreitlow on the road, Colorado, making a remote stop here. This is our first 4. I think coming out pretty nice. I like this stuff. Anyway, Matt Florer and Matt Bergandi.
Yep.
Right? Okay,
yep.
From University of San Diego. Nailed it. Anyway, guys, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. This is really exciting because, first university that we're having from San Diego area, and I feel like we can directly connect with the community here in San Diego, and what better two guys to do it than you. So why don't you guys start off one at a time, introduce yourself with a player history, maybe, and maybe a fun fact or something, and we'll go from there.
Nice. Yeah. Well, thanks. Thanks to the two of you guys for having us on. I know, Bergandi and I being able to build our own relationship with the two of you guys and myself even swinging by the facility and not yet the new one. I'm excited to see that here shortly, but you guys are doing awesome things. What you're doing on social media is captivating. So a lot of credit to you guys. So pumped to be on this thing. But like John said, Matt Florer, I'm the pitching coach here at the University of San Diego. This is my second season here. Prior to spending time at the University of San Diego, I previously played at and then also coached at Loyola Marymount University, and that's up in the Los Angeles area. Like I said, I was there for 4 seasons. The last 2 of them were there specifically as the pitching coach, and then was able to mold into the position here to USD. And then prior to that, always just been a Southern California guy myself. I grew up in Mission Viejo, so only about an hour north of San Diego. Have always just kind of, enjoyed, the life that we live, and being able to now give back on the coaching end to the baseball community. At least hope that I'm giving back to the baseball community. It's definitely something that I know Bergandi will touch on, but we absolutely enjoy, and we're lucky to be a part of. So, fun fact, goodness gracious, I'm left-handed. I'm goofy as all. But hey, again, happy to be here. Happy to break things down with you.
Well,
how do you
that's
follow
gonna be,
that?
I don't know how I was going to follow that, but thank you, Coach Florer, for the great introduction. Oh my gosh, jeez, it's like this in every meeting too. It's so profound when he speaks, and just listening to him, it's just the opportunity is amazing every single day. But following that, I'm Matt Bergandi. I'm the director of player development at University of San Diego. It's my first year. Technically, we'll put the asterisk next year. Well, I guess will be the first year too. I get to work alongside the wonderful Matthew Florer every day. I get to learn from him and the way he speaks about pitching and everything from the recruiting side to home visits to NCAA. This man's covered it all. But I actually played at University of San Diego years ago. Bounced around. I had every single injury in the book due to the shoulder and the elbow. But then I started my coaching career at Mission College in the Bay Area. It's a junior college up there. And then last year as the catching coach over at San Francisco State. And then I was finally able to come home. It's great homecoming to be able to come back to the homeland and be back with my brothers here down in San Diego. I'm from the Bay Area, and I think a little fact about me is I'm a twin brother, and he also played at USD, and he lives down here, so it's great to be within driving distance of each other. And thanks again for having us, guys.
So, what position is he?
He was a third baseman, but now he's a real estate agent. So it's a quick transition.
The hot corner, right?
Yeah, he's ready. He's always ready. He's on his toes.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You guys were off to a start and a half. I was telling Cass that I was looking at a couple games. We did an event last year where we took the whole organization to San Diego State game, and this year we planned on coming to you guys. And I was eyeing the Fullerton game, and we were coming up on that. You guys were kind of hot. They were kind of hot. I was like, I think it's going to be a pretty solid ball game. It's Tuesday night. I think it's Tuesday night, but you guys were 8-0 at home and 2-3 on the road. Why don't you tell everybody about how it was going and how you got there?
Yeah, I think we knew that we had a special group. And honestly, I know it sounds funny, but we knew that there was something special brewing. Probably back, as early as last summer. when individuals depart and, specific players of yours grow into leadership roles, we were just, like I said, we were really excited for what was about to take place. They had a good fall. They were challenged, a lot of early mornings, a lot of tough conditioning. We all know, the fun parts, I guess, of college athletics. But, as then we got to the spring, I think the biggest bummer being, and Coach Bergandi and I both, talked about this, him helping me out a ton just with his own eyes. But we really felt as though that final week of competition, we spent a full week out at Indiana. We played Indiana State. We took 2 out of 3 at, the University of Indiana. And then we put together a shutout on that final game. It ends up being the final game of ours against Cal Baptist. And we really had felt in those, call it 5 games, that we were starting to kind of hit our stride on the mound. And as we all know, especially, coming from a little bit more of a pitching background, the secret to success is going to be what's taking place there. And we really felt as though we were kind of getting into our own. Guys were emerging into huge roles. Younger guys were stepping into, into big roles themselves. And we were about to open up conference play with just a ton of confidence on the pitching side. So again, when the NCAA comes through and says, in a matter of, gosh, it was 4 hours probably, that, hey, first your season's been suspended. Maybe we're going to resume here in 3 weeks. Then all of a sudden, on social media, the College World Series is canceled. As funny as that is, that was the avenue that it took. And then all of a sudden, of course, we're figuring out, okay, if the College World Series canceled, what are we going to be doing in terms of competition? So the season being canceled itself. So yeah, it was a good start. We were hitting our stride on the mound. The offense was, of course, doing their thing. So we were excited for what is to come. But the good thing being that we have a ton of our guys returning next year, which should be a promising 2021 season as well. So.
Could you speak on, just update everybody on what the NCAA's decision is on everything? And I know that there's a weird bottleneck issue that's going on that we can see, whether it's this year or in 3 years. I know you guys are probably anticipating that. Do you guys have any plans for that?
Yeah, I think, to kind of first allow, just your viewers to kind of catch them up to speed with just NCAA rules in general. And a lot of individuals know this, but you're dealt with kind of 3 things. One being that a roster size cannot be any larger than 35 individuals. And then the second tier being that out of those 35 individuals, only 27 of them, or up to 27 of them, can be on scholarship. And then from there, you only have 11.7 scholarships to use. So, unlike football and basketball, where those are fully funded sports, and I get that, that they do generate more money than baseball, and that's just the facts. So they can, reward their student athletes accordingly. But, we have to handle things from a scholarship perspective, definitely with the idea of having a cap space, if you want to break it down kind of in a professional term. So we got to be smart in how we're utilizing. Hey, do we spend 75% of a scholarship here, 25% of a scholarship there, et cetera, moving forward? So, John, like you just brought up, the NCAA cancels the season. We all have this idea that they're at least going to reward the seniors, rightfully so, but the seniors who are in their last year of eligibility, maybe an additional year of eligibility. And that's kind of what we all thought was going to take place. But then all of a sudden, the NCAA comes out now about 3-4 weeks ago and lets us know, hey, not only are those seniors going to get their eligibility back, but every athlete on your team essentially gets their year back. So, next year, meaning that you're going to have, like you had brought up, just kind of a bottleneck of individuals of, hey, a 19, 20-year-old freshman, because, they didn't necessarily, I guess, complete their freshman campaign. And it has now led to them being, reclassified through NCAA standards as a freshman again. And then you bring in student athletes, right? I mean, we're bringing in, 10 different individuals from our recruiting class. So, there's going to be an interesting kind of, I think just an interesting way of being able to manage your team based on the fact that roster size, NCAA is going to allow an expansion of roster size for at least just 1 year to kind of complement this. But I think what you're going to really see, which is exciting for all of us, every level of college baseball. And if I had to imagine, probably the two levels that come to mind being Division I baseball and then junior college baseball being extremely strong over these next few years. And that's just because of, the alternative of players but being awarded that extra year. And then maybe, unfortunately, my heart goes out to those 2020 high school seniors of all players, because they're not getting an extra year back. They just lose that year. And there's going to be a ton of talent that filters through to the junior college level because they just didn't get the exposure that, unfortunately, that we were all hoping for if we were able to still compete this spring. So I think it's going to be an exciting time for college baseball. Like I said, Division I baseball and junior college baseball especially. And, of course, that's going to filter through to every single level. So I think, like I said, for fans of college baseball, it's going to be fun to watch, over these next 2-3 years as everything starts to slowly get back to kind of the normalcy that we're accustomed to.
I also feel for the like the 5th and 6th year seniors that like got redshirted or got injured, and then now like let's say you're a catcher and you like broke your ankle or something weird, right? And then you just don't really come back. And then do you redo those early mornings again and go to school another year for your 7th year? Like, goodness.
If you love it, man, you do it. If you feel it every day, then you do it.
Yeah, I just know that for me personally, I guess it would be a tough decision. It'd be, what is going to happen with the draft? What are they going to do? They just dropped 40 MLB teams. So, like, I guess I'd be more likely to stay. There's a whole bunch of news and things that's going on with the situation that, it's interesting how you guys are handling it and what you're looking at. I feel for all these 2020s too.
No.
Jump
in, Coach Bergandi, after this. But, from my perspective, like you said, John, those older guys, I think it just, unfortunately, it forces a decision about just your life at an earlier time that these guys were anticipating, and just being real with themselves, understanding the athlete that they are. They're coming to now this crossroad of, gosh, I was expecting, to at least play collegiate baseball until June. And now this season ends for us in March. And hey, maybe I know that the best thing for my own life and career is to move away from the game. And that's not an easy decision, as we all know. But that's definitely one that, I think when you get it's kind of a slap in the face, a wake-up call that happens 3 months prior to what everyone was hoping for. It definitely, you deal with a lot of emotions from these teammates or players of ours that are just kind of in the unknown. So, Coach Bergandi, take the wheel, man.
No, I was just going to say, oh yeah, thanks, Coach Flo. No, I was just saying it's a great opportunity, and the downside of it, with all this going on, it helps our guys kind of focus on school again, being a very academic university. The guys that do want to come back another year, they can have a lighter load during season and during their next year. And also there's guys that are having that decision, is it worth it to, once I get this piece of paper at the end of my 4 years here, to move on and get a job and start interviewing everywhere else, or is it worth it to get that grad year and come back and become a graduate student? And so there's a lot of decisions that go into it, but something that we're very big on at USD is our culture. So we know that our guys that are coming back are so bought into this program that they're excited to come back. Like when all this news came out, there's two routes that could have gone. Guys could have been like, oh man, this stinks. Like, I can't believe this is happening. But then there's the route of, oh boy, like, look what's coming. Like, I'm excited for next year. Look at all this time that we have to train and get ready for next year. So, I mean, I think most of our guys have been going the second way, as long as we've been having our fingers crossed and they've been telling us, but we were so stoked for this. But I think most of the guys that are having that tough decision are so in love with our culture and our team and our school that they're leaning towards coming back and giving it another run.
That's great.
I just want to, like, thinking out loud about those decisions. I will say, I don't hear this message being strewn a lot. A lot of kids are, like, crapped on because they don't have perspective, because they don't have, I don't know, like, kids are soft, or however you want to put it, right? Like, our generation just gets crapped on. And it's like, well, for the first time ever, they're actually having to make some serious decisions about what the heck they're going to do. Right. And so for everybody, this is new for everybody, but it's cool because they have a unique perspective on it. So a lot of these kids don't have real problems, but this presents a real freaking problem. And so for a lot of young men and women, they're forcing themselves to make bigger life decisions than they ever had imagined in these moments. And I think that's really cool, regardless of what we're talking about, whether this is baseball or not. So, that's me going a little bit off on a tangent, but you're talking about culture, you're talking about raising, or not raising, but, building young people up. Right. And, gosh, this is where you have to be honest with yourself, right? No matter what. So how are you going to use your time? Blah, blah, blah. I'm just excited that everybody's growing a lot through this, but this kind of takes the target off their back, because this stuff is mentally messed up, right? I don't know that this is like, go get drafted, right? Because I know early on people were like, hey, remember when you had to go to war when you turned 18? Like those kind of things. But this is on a different level, right? Just psychologically, what have we done where it's like, there's nothing wrong, but there's so much wrong. It's cool and not at the same time. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And something that Coach Ungrich, our other assistant coach, he talks a lot about throughout his just, kind of experience is you are going to be who you are. And what he means by that is, if you're going to be a big leaguer, you're not going to let anything or anyone get in your way. You're not going to let a situation like a pandemic, which is a real, it's a real issue that we're all of us are dealing with. You're not going to let a specific coach, to get in your way. You're going to find ways to outcompete and compete then with yourself, so that you can then perform at the highest level of your ability. So, as Coach Bergandi, you had brought up, Cass, you had just brought up, there is a lot of more so, there's a ton of mentality that's going into, something like this of, hey, I have a decision to make. I can just sit on my couch and go through my, Zoom studies that, the USD has, makes me do, and then that's call it a day. Or it's, I'm going to wake up early, I'm going to put together a good breakfast, a workout, a run, go to class, then be able to get outside, get to a facility to train, et cetera. So, I think that's where there's going to be a real separation probably of, of those 1% elite players at every level. Probably, it's going to be interesting to see, but even at the MLB level, it's going to be interesting to see who comes out and maybe doesn't have a hot start, and again, I don't want to relate it directly to a correlation of maybe what they were or were not doing during this time away from one another, but it's easy to point that finger, because it's just something that, all of us can do in comparison to players that do come out and have a hot start. So again, it's definitely a test for the mentality over anything else for the time being.
I think an interesting perspective, though, is that, like, I couldn't disagree with anything that you've said. It's super important that you've taken this time and continued to try to push towards your goals, whatever they may be. And maybe this is me pushing my own agenda, but my life has been, a lot of those things that I've been doing have been taken away, right? So baseball and CrossFit were the two things. I can't experience those things on any level that I used to 8 weeks ago. Right. And so, like, some of the things that allow people to train the way that they want to train are because the other things in their life allow them the stability to do that. I have met players who are very talented, right, and actually do very well in the classroom. But sometimes life is really freaking hard, and they can't train well, it kills their training. It has nothing to do with their desire to train or to their desire to be a big leaguer. It's that some of this stuff is deeper than that. So I'm simply just, I know we have a lot of kids watching, and I think we do have to have some sort of,
just perspective.
Leeway. Yeah, some perspective and leeway. And if you're a kid that's going like, man, I can't get myself to crush it during this time, I'm just saying, like, take a breath, and it's probably like you're not the only person doing that, right? I mean, the whole point, why are you in a college baseball program, right? Like, why do you gravitate towards these things? It's the same reason that I'm in CrossFit, because I don't want to work my butt off that much, but I'll do it when I got my brothers and sisters right next to me, right? Like, I'll do those things. And so this kind of just like, I don't know, it exposes certain kinds of people, right? So if you're more like, hey, I love being a homebody, dude, I have so many people that are like, I don't have to see anybody. I don't have to see anybody forever. What? Right? And that's such a different perspective. So anyway, it's messed up. I don't even know what, I just trying to give all perspectives for the kids. So,
I mean, when you break it down at the end of the day, you have two decisions. Or two ways to look at it. You have to do something, or you get to do something. So the way that we talk about it is, if a guy wakes up, he's like, oh man, I have class in an hour, then I have to work out, and I have to go to a Zoom meeting for yoga at 3. It's like, okay, that guy already took a loss for the day. He's not going to do that thing that all the big leaguers want to do. It's, you get to wake up early. You get to do that. You get to go to that Zoom meeting at 3:00 for hot yoga. You get to do all these things. So if kids are struggling with it, like, I get the times are hard, but once you change kind of your mentality of where you're at and how your day looks, like, realistically, do you guys love doing Cutternation behind a camera? Like, do you like, hey man, we got to get the arm up. No, it's easier when you're in person, but you still get to have the opportunity to train kids through this. So I think once the mentality starts to change, that's when people can start going back to their normal routines.
Yeah, totally.
One thing that I just thought of too, the timing issue of lack of game time, right, is going to be, I wonder how long that's going to take. You got these summer leagues that are starting up, right? You haven't played. I think we might, it would be easy to understand if bad baseball started off in some of these situations, a lot of 4-ball counts, 3-ball counts, a lot of bad swings, like, almost like you forgot how to play the game. Staying in rhythm, I think, is one of the things that the international community does way better than, the United States in playing the game. But they also play a different style of game as far as how long you're active in it. There's kind of like a half season and then like a 1/3 season is where I would say that Mexico and Japan and them do it, right? And the States just do this huge thing, right? And so it makes you wonder, like, how things will progress and develop in these programs, because, we don't know, on a very, very conservative side, we don't know when groups like this thing will actually be okay, right? Like, some of these situations may change for a very long time. And so, I think about how technology's progressed and how things are going. And as a baseball program, I feel for you. Like, I was lucky enough to be the school, be the only guy that had the full ride, right? And everybody knew it. They made a big deal of it when, for each guy that gets it every year, it's kind of like your award as the captain kind of thing. And I was very proud of that, right? And so looking at how this whole situation goes, like, how do you keep these guys from, what is it, April 28th to the next competitive game that means anything? Let's say I hear late July is where I'm hearing some.
Didn't they already cancel the Cape?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So how do you get these? Yeah, exactly. How do you get these guys to do? Because right now we're talking about training or like, right?
Absolutely. I think you're absolutely right too, John, where it's just everyone fears the unknown, and that's normal, and in a lot of different things in life. And our players right now are just, are dealing with the unknown of what's the timeline ahead of me, and I don't have a correct answer where guys are, hey, do I need to be ready to go July 1, or do I need to be ready to go, September 1? Or, and we all know as on the pitching side, typically, okay, you have your date, you're going to circle it, and then you can work backwards from there of how you want to prepare to get ready to go out and compete. And that's where, telling our guys is, hey, we also have to be fearful of what if this a second wave, and I don't want to play doomsday, but what if a second wave of this pandemic hits and we're unable to get out and compete until January? I mean, what if that is the case? And so all of a sudden, I think my biggest fear is, you bring up the games. Whenever that does resume, it is going to be sloppy, right? I mean, absolutely. If from a shifting gears, rather from a development perspective, but from a recruiting perspective, going back out and watching high school players compete, you're going to have to use a different lens because, there's just like, you got absolutely, like what Cass was saying, you have to have perspective of, what they were able to do and how then us college coaches are going to be able to evaluate them. But my biggest fear is the health, especially us on the mound. We don't know. Again, we have an idea of what our players are doing, but I can't due to NCAA rules, I can't say, hey, this is what you need to do and this is what you have to do. And two, each arm's different, each body's different. So I want them to create their own plan of success. But that's my fear is, let's say summer gets canceled and we'll just make it easy. We're September 1, we're able to jump back out there. As Coach Bergandi and I are monitoring our guys and their throwing patterns, the accelerator is going to have to wait a little bit longer in comparison to maybe normal falls. And that's just because, I hate to say it, and you don't want to treat, everyone the same, cookie cutter it, but there are going to be guys that you're going to be fearful for of, okay, what was their real intent being away for this long and how they went about their business? And then how can we ramp it back up to prepare for an inter squad in October? So that my biggest fear is.
FYI, this is the fear of every Division III coach every year, nonstop.
I believe it. I mean, I believe it. And that's, goodness gracious, that is, what we talk about the most is how are we going to prepare our guys so that they can maintain their health? Because that's always the number one thing that Coach Bergandi and I talk about, day one of when we meet with our pitchers every year is communication, the importance of it, and why that helps and leads towards success with your health. And we're not going to talk X's and O's. We're not going to talk expectations. It's health and the communication behind it. So that's kind of what's going to be interesting moving forward.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm a lifetime thrower now. Like, it's just not going to stop ever,
right.
And so that being said, I think this is a massive opportunity. Like, if you reverse engineer that idea from September 1, like for me at that age, now I'm super excited because now it's April and then it's September 1. I have a lot of time that I could, really keep developing. And so, my biggest advice to everybody is like, just don't turn it off, right? Because the competitiveness that goes into an outing as opposed to like a bullpen or a long toss session or, playing catch it's just not the same, right? So I feel like, a lot of pitchers don't understand the concept of building up, right? And there's different theories to this and that. But for what I've seen, a lot of the players that I've played with, the on-ramping, off-ramping idea of like literally taking time off just doesn't necessarily work with what we see, right? And so if you're in a constant state of growth of what you're doing, as long as you're evaluating where you're at in your season, you can keep progressing, right? It's one of Yeager's stories that he talks about where if your season's over, the way you celebrate is you go long toss, right? It's a way to feed your arm, right? Yeah. And there's stories about this where like I got a story about Beckett where they lose to the Yankees one year and he takes a bucket of the BP balls, goes to home plate, and he's long tossing over the monster because he's mad, right? That was his throwing session. And so, there's that kind of idea gets lost, not understanding like how important it actually is to keep your patterning, to keep your motion, to keep the elasticity of your arm, to keep that going. I don't know if you got another funny story too. Scherzer was playing catch in the middle of the parade, like drinking beers and playing catch. It was awesome. I was like, yes, this is my dude. Like, I'm still bought in on him. Let's go. You did it. And you got a Bud Heavy and a glove. And it was hilarious. But in the same sense, like, I think he understood, like, and he played catch for like 15 minutes and it was hilarious. And he did it with some kid and it wasn't really, it was a story, but it wasn't. But really what I saw with it was I bet you we know that dude's a mad scientist when it comes to, he knows his body and his arm. And he hopped off that double-decker bus and was like, hey, it's been 3 days. I'm going to lose my mind. I got to play catch. Otherwise this neck thing's going to happen again. And we got to get that doctor over here and he's going to crank. I listened to Game 7 the other day and they talked about that guy and I meant to go back and make a note of it, but it's, you know, he's apparently got some neck kink thing, can't raise his arm up. The guy does like a 36-hour treatment and then he's 97 again. I'm like, oh,
dude, I was just watching. So if you somebody like mirrored him and Cole right next to, like, front, I don't know, it was an overlay. And I was thinking the same freaking thing because it comes up into his head. So that's where we were talking about how we were just asking somebody this on the show because Scherzer does this weird thing where he just keeps his hand going forward. So the ball will come out and then he like fakes his hand going. I mean, it's one way to slow down, but you've heard us talk, like, you can rotate out of that. You can disperse that into bigger muscles. And anyway, it literally comes up and hits him in the head. And I was wondering, and then here you go. So some neck thing. But it's funny how we just like assume that, oh, it's Max Scherzer, that must not hurt. But it's like, no, that would hurt me. Probably bothers him.
Yeah. I think he's under the school with that. The way he follows through is like it's a controlled dislocation of the arm. So it just kind of like turns off right after release.
Yeah.
And so
and the point –
it's so weird to watch.
I'm not shitting on him because the point is that that's why you throw nonstop, because now you can overcome these things, to your point, you know? So anyway, keep going.
No, I think if you guys don't mind, I think, you know, even for us coaches and Coach Bergandi, I want to hear kind of what your perspective is on this. And I know we've talked about this a little bit, but you know, over time too, us coaches need to evolve. And I say that I need to just continue to educate themselves, you know, at being a teacher essentially. And I'm the first one to admit that in my first year or so of being a pitching coach at this level, you know, there was a little, and it was wrong. I don't know right or wrong, but my hunch is now, who knows 10 years from now, but, you know, my hunch is now that was probably wrong for me to do a little bit more of kind of the controlling of a throwing program and, you know, recommending, hey, this amount of time off, or, you know, this is what you need to do to succeed. Where now kind of catching us up to speed, there's just so much science behind, you know, there's a reason why, you know, in professional baseball and Major League Baseball, you know, those high-end Tommy John surgeries are taking place within the first 2 months, or the last month, I guess, of spring training and the first month of the regular season. And that's probably based off looking back what they were doing, or maybe they stopped throwing for a brief bit, or, you know, whatever program matches to their specific needs and their specific body. Now, where I will say, and kind of an interesting note, where I do, or I would maybe recommend taking time off, if it's a handful of time off from throwing, is if this guy needs a break. You know, if the mind needs a little bit of you just come off a rough season, right? Or I even reflect on, I remember a fall of mine where I put together a terrible fall. I mean, it was embarrassing. And the best thing I did was I get to winter break, and our coach at the time, you know, a really smart individual, he gives us a recommended throwing plan and, you know, how we can tinker with it. And I just took that thing, and I wasn't trying to be disrespectful, but I flipped it over, turned it over. I said, I'm not even going to throw for these next 14 days. Screw it. You know, I'm over it. And when I was able to come back, what it was is probably wasn't helpful for my arm, but more importantly, it was helpful for my mind. And that's what then helped me, you know, kind of get to a better place once we got to the competitive part of the spring. So, yeah, I think there's just so much, you know, so much science to it, so much, you know, education, so much information to really, you know, determine what you want to do with, you know, with the arm and keeping it active. As of right now, as of April 28, 2020, I'm a big fan of it. 20 years from now, who knows? There's more education saying that, you know what, you need to take 4 weeks off, and then, you know, so you got to. That's where the part of yourself needing to evolve has to take place. But yeah, it's kind of where I'm at right now. Coach Bergandi, what do you got on it?
Well, John, I'm there with you. I'm a year-long thrower, and hence all the scars all over my body. But I think a reason that I learned all that is I was a year-long thrower, but whenever I would stop, there it is. Whenever I would stop and then I would try to pick it up again, that's when I felt the tightest, and that's when I was like, oh, this is bad. But the issue I got into, and I can say I was guilty of it, is I could throw it pretty decent. So when I started feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm getting to the mid-9s again, like I'm getting back up there, and then all of a sudden I'm like, I try to get greedy. Okay, so what can I do today to do extra to get to that 6, to that 7, to that 8? And then little do I know I'm overworking, my arm hurts, and then the next day I hop on the mountain and I'm 72 miles an hour. Because it's like you have to be smart about it. So what's great about this time is, like Coach Flo was saying, September 1, let's talk about that. That doesn't mean that I need to throw 98 miles an hour tomorrow. That just means that I have a great opportunity to continue my long toss, to be smart about all my throwing, and don't do anything stupid. I think it is a great time for plyo work and core work and stretching, even just your wrist, just little things. But I think in 20 years from now, Flo's right. It could just be like, hey, you're going to throw in the fall, and then from Thanksgiving to New Year's, we're not even going to look at a baseball. Like, you never know. And that's the best part about being coaches. Like, it all changes. Like, I can reflect on when I was the catching coach over at San Francisco State. I remember when I was catching, it was like, well, you don't catch on a knee. That's lazy. It just shows that you don't care. And then all of a sudden, the major league catchers started doing it. I called a couple of my buddies. I talked to Jerry Weinstein over with the Rockies a couple of times, and he was like, hey, man, this is the new wave. This is how you do it, and you work through it. And it's one of those things that you just have to adapt to it. And that's what's great. And this whole throwing year-round, I think right now it's great. If kids do it under a great, not a microscope, but if they do it under just a good lens of saying, okay, let's not overdo it, it's going to be great for the body. One of my buddies, Wayne Franklin, pitched a long time in the major leagues, and he talks about how he never stopped throwing. And just like you, John, maybe how you're going to be in 30 years from now. Wayne's not that old. I'm not going to date him.
Hey,
but
why not?
Wayne can still throw.
30-year-old throw 100, and it really changed my brain. And I was like, I don't really know what's going on here, but this is crazy.
Wayne still throws. I coached him at San Francisco State, and I coached summer ball with him, and we'd go out there and long toss every day. And I would be the one that was tired before him, and he never stopped throwing.
It's fun. It's fun to throw far. Like, that's, that whole being good at it, the game of catch. Like, we talked about something before you guys got on. Cass and I were about like our future programming and what's going to happen and stuff. And one of the things that I think is actually missed and like overcomplicated is catch, right? And so thinking about doing some long toss programs where you go out there and it'd be 3 times a week, right? Where you progress through it, you do some ideas, and then you do a couple shuffle fires or something afterwards, just to open up the arm just a little bit,
have some fun.
and to make it have some fun. Like, it's so funny when I talk to some of the dads when they were they're worried about the kids, and especially the ones that have played, right? The ones that have played are like a little bit on the fence, and then you go into the like, hey, do you remember when you were playing right field and you just ripped balls to the catcher? Remember that? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, wasn't that a lot of fun? They're like, it was a blast. I'm like, that's the same thing he's doing right now. He's doing the same thing. He's just throwing it at the target. There's a radar gun just right there, so he's getting feedback. That's all it is, man. It's nothing.
Everyone wants to be Vladimir Guerrero. I mean, that's.
Oh,
I was like, I talked to Coach Flo about this last week. Like, we were talking about just like the follow through and his get up and go and the way his arm works, and it's like that dude had a cannon of an arm, and it's fun to watch. And so, like, when you're playing catch, every once in a while, it's great just to say, okay, so I'm going to throw this ball as hard as I can, 4 feet off the ground for 200 feet. And you might not do it, but you'll impress yourself with the backspin, the height, the true spin. Mm-hmm. But it's fun. You gotta have fun with it.
Dude, it's so much. When Taylor and I throw, or Vance and I throw, when we're out behind the gym, because we still just got a couple of them throwing, we rip at each other. It is so much. We're 75 feet away or whatever, and just absolutely trying to break each other's face. And like the level of game of catch that goes with that, it's so much fun, but it's not an easy skill to have. Once you start getting out of control, when you're trying to go even faster than you're used to, that's where we start losing the body, and being able to stay within your idea of your motion and learn how to do that, right? The learning of no numbers, just the feeling of I'm going to rip this ball and hit him in the chest. Right. That idea just really gains confidence with a lot of our guys, because that's the feeling of what you're trying to harness, right? We see it with Taylor. When he Cass and I are very, we come at him from different angles, right, on stuff. And one of the things that I'm always telling Taylor is I'm like, dude, when you focus on competing and just like ripping balls at the mitt, you kind of just do it without thinking about it, man. You kind of get to this spot, you put the arm down to here, and then you let it rip. And next thing you know, it's 96. And like, you might miss by 3 inches, but dude, who cares? Like, it's 96, it's over the plate. Like, what's the worst that could happen? Like,
competitive
early, yeah. You know what I mean? And so we've been working on him to like be able to turn on the aggression and not worry too much about, like going 1-0 and like still being able to come back with a fastball and try to pummel it inside or throw a cutter middle and just see what happens where just that little bit of an idea where you're not trying to be too fancy, right? Still accomplishing 3 pitches to make this guy do anything, right? If you throw a first pitch ball, we know the numbers flip everywhere, but like we give the guy too much credit at the plate. Like, I dare you to sit fastball and I throw a nasty cutter or a slider and 1-0 and you top it and roll over a shortstop. Like, it's just an easy math problem that if you just throw it right where it's supposed to be, like the guy runs down to first base unbelievably upset. How dare you throw a 1-0 slider? Like, it's like, dude, it's really not that big a deal,
Yeah, let me get the ball back and I'm going to do it to your buddy again. And we're going to get 2 outs here in a second.
Dude.
Yeah.
Oh, man, you guys would have – if you thought that was fun, you should have seen me at the NBC World Series where I had a Alaskan team, like, cussing me out on the mound, calling me old, like, all this stuff released recently. It was pretty funny. They were mad. And I was like, why are you mad that I'm bouncing cutters first pitch and all of you are swinging at it because you're selling out? Like, I don't understand. I'm not swinging the bat. Like, 1 through 9, swung. Yeah, you swung at the first and second pitch the entire game, and you're mad I went 9 and struck out 11 because you guys don't know what you're doing. Like, nobody took anything, right? I stopped throwing strikes in like the 3rd inning because you guys were literally just I'd float up a changeup, you'd rip it at the dugout and like deep exhale. Oh yeah, I got this. Like, you're a moron. yeah, you're an absolute moron. Like, you don't even know what's about to happen. Jeez, yeah. Same thing to your buddy. Here you go, right there. Swing over it. Go ahead, next guy. Like, it's just so it's so funny that like the mental side of the game, and so that's where we really like to focus is like we ran a live at bat training program this summer, and we just saw the competitiveness idea of the guys. We were actually able to translate it way better into the game because it was the idea. It's one-on-one basketball. You're playing another human. You're not trying to hit a spot. This is not the same thing, right? Nobody's telling you what to do. You can do whatever you want here. If you walk the guy, literally nothing happens. Like, we just redo the 3-2 count just because why not, right? Yeah. And then there's another batter after that. So getting over the fear of failure right there, and like, who cares if you give up a bomb and stuff like that, and just trying to be nasty. We got guys competing at like 84, 86, like just coming hard in with the cutter, front door 2-seam, back foot change, like just throwing nasty stuff with it just because they understand like, oh, these are the areas I don't get hurt at,
Yeah, like you said too, John, just it's amazing how the top performers at any level, it's all relative, but the best players at whatever level you're looking at really find a way to simplify the game. And, Coach Bergandi and I were laughing about it. I was able to have one of, my past players come out over the, close to the end of the fall as he was preparing to get right back into his professional side of things. And, he's watching a few bullpens with us, and he's just scratching his head about like, why can't this kid throw a slider? Like, what do we like? Why can't you throw a slider? Like, and it was so simple in his actual. And I was like, hey Corey, talk to the kid. Tell him how you throw your slider. And it's a good slider, so tell him how you throw your slider. And he shows him the grip, and he's like, all right, rip it,
just rip it.
And that's all he said. And he's like, he's like, just throw the heck out of it and rip it. But again, it's funny. It was fun for me as a guy that, coached this kid, now 2-3 years ago, and he's having so much success in professional baseball. But just for him to just communicate now with a current player and just say, rip it. I mean, how beautiful is that? And you know, and like you said too, in catch play, finding the fun in being competitive in catch play, and that's, you know, a huge foundation for our program, and you know, wherever this career path takes. I'm a huge fan of how we're attacking, you know, our day-to-day catch. And the reason to it is, let's be real, you know, you might, in a 7-day week, you might only get off the mound 3 times. Okay. Especially as you're competing in the season, you know, maybe a little short box, a bullpen, and then you're throwing in your outing. Right. But at the end of it, you're still playing catch 6 of those days, at least, probably some of them all 7. So mathematically, where can we find our development? Let's take the odds that you're playing catch 7 days and you're getting off the mound 3 of them. So finding a way to find the fun and competitiveness in that catch play and being aggressive with it is crucial too. So yeah, great points brought up.
I mean, everyone's different with the catch play. Like, we have a pitcher, I'm not going to name drop him, but his competitive nature comes in after every day of catch play. He gets off the mound and he throws 5 to 10 fastballs into just a net off the mound. And that's his competitive nature every day, because he's trying to find his feeling off the rubber. We have another pitcher who throws every single ball at 100%. Doesn't matter the distance. Doesn't matter what it doesn't matter, but that's his competitiveness. And then we have another guy that kind of is slower going out. And then all of a sudden, when he gets to the flat ground mode of the back end of his catch play, his eyes kind of flip back into his head. Red lasers come out, and it's just disgusting. So once everybody figures out their way of competitiveness before they get to the rubber, I think that's such a key thing. And I like applaud you guys for getting that competitive nature through Cutternation, because that's something that needs to be shown. Like, hey guys, yeah, we're training all the time. Yeah, we're throwing hard. But when that hitter steps in there, you just see gray. Doesn't matter who he is, doesn't matter where he's from, doesn't matter how sweet his walk-up song is, because he's going to walk back to the
My favorite part. A nice road game with sick walk-up music that I get to dance to. Like, yeah,
there was a pitcher last year that we faced. He was at Cal State Monterey Bay, and he was actually a singer too, and he had perfect pitch. And so they came to us, and he was on the mound just head bobbing to every song and singing it. And I hate to say this because I don't want to, but he was nasty that day. He would sing the walkout songs to our guy and then tell him to get ready to walk back. I think he struck out like 12. And I just remember standing in the first base box going like, ooh, this is hard to watch, but this is kind of fun to watch because this guy's so into it. He's just into
never forget what's happening. Yes.
Never, exactly.
Coach Bergandi, why do you have a cup on?
No, I was standing there like, wow, this guy's really good. Like, and he's just excited to be out there. He's ready to go. He's into it.
He's in the moment for sure.
He's in the moment. Yeah.
It's funny, when I was playing in Mexico, I would dance on the mound a little bit sometimes, and like the crowd would kind of go with it. I'd do a little hip shimmy, little something, and the crowd would go, and I'm like, oh, that's fun. You know, like, you guys are in it as much as I am. Like, that guy had a sick walk-up song. Granted,
you're playing a game.
Yeah, exactly.
Have some fun. Relax. Just get after it.
I really liked how you were talking about those guys as like different personalities in how they play their catch and how they compete. And I just think about John, you know, highlighting how we're storytellers, and just the way that a lot of coaches don't go that, like, that's silly. That's good that you do that. You know what I mean? And it's not so obvious that you should be doing little things like that, but helping kids understand what theirs is so critical. I'll just speak on mine. Like, mine was junior year, kind of figured it out. And like, I can go there now. And I didn't get that until like 25, but like, you know, as a 21, 22-year-old, I started knowing how to go there. Right. And so like helping younger players, or just, I suppose, any players at your level, right. Like create their own little like Vanimal, right. Their mantra, right. What are they? And like, you have to be able to tell them a story convincing enough for them to not just think that you're talking down to them. So anyway, I just wanted to highlight that because that's so critical. And I don't know that I've done, you know, John, it's second nature to John, you know. The closest thing that I can do is give him silly little nicknames and just, you know, joke with him. But then to like, you know, make it full on, turn it into a personality on the mound. Do you know what I mean? Like, to pull that out of kids is something special. So I'm hearing that, buddy. I'm hearing that, Bergandi.
Yeah, we had a pitcher this year. He was he was a freak. And I had the opportunity of hanging out in the bullpen and making sure guys are nice and hot. But I knew when he was going to have a good day when he was singing to himself "Party in the USA" by Miley Cyrus. And it wasn't like he was like singing, like he was really angry, dripping sweat, singing every word, and the ball would fly out of his hand. I remember the first time I heard this, we were in Arizona for the beginning of the year tournament, and I'm sitting there and I hear, "Put my hands, whack up," and I'm just like, who is this kid? But he pitched great, and that was his thing. And then I remember asking him after the game, like, "Hey man, what is that?" He's like, "I don't know, like in high school, like had an ex-girlfriend, this was her favorite song. When I think of it, I get fired up and I just go out there and destroy it." And that's what he did. And that's one of those things that we can't control. Like, it's not like Coach Flo can go up and coach him into it. That's something that they evolve into.
Yeah, find it, for sure.
One thing I applaud Coach Flo, I'm going to applaud you right here. You just take it. He does such a great job of giving the guys the freedom of making their own throwing program. So it's not this cookie cutter. It's, hey, man, here's a schedule. What are you going to do today? What are you going to do for this? So the guy can start to figure out who they are going to be for the rest of their life. So when you get this kid, let's say we've taken a freshman, he's used to a throwing program, but this kid's projectable to be a big leaguer one day. It's like, hey, man, when you're 24 years old and you're pitching in the show, a guy's not going to hand you a piece of paper and say, this is your throwing routine. So let's get started on this now. And so it starts the development process. So props to you, Coach Flo, that guys are getting ready for the rest of their life because of him. So these guys come to our program and they're coached into this theory of, hey, man, you're creating all this. You're going to come up with what makes you tick. And once you figure it out, you'll fill it out in a Google Doc. You'll come in and meet with us and kind of say, hey, this is what gets me going. This is what makes me feel good. And this is what I want to do.
That's awesome. I love that idea. Like we have generalities with the ideas of our throwing days, so we can educate kids, even as 9, so they can understand their active rest days. We call it 20, 50, 100% days, and it's defined by your output. Even guys that go into bullpen, or we talked about game situations or live at bats, those are more stressful, but really teaching them how to pull back the throttle at what the idea is a 50% day, and then learn. And most of the time it's not necessarily 50%. It's very hard to throw 43 miles an hour when you throw 75. It's just that's a difficult thing to do, right? So the idea of just not maxing out and trying to feel the ball come off your hand and just be good at throwing and work on your follow through and sticking it.
I just wanted to throw this out there because I don't know if you guys heard this in another podcast. On our low effort days, so like you've heard this called many different things, all right? Everybody has some sort of low, medium, high, some whatever. On our medium day, I had a remote training client and I was jumping back and forth. His max velo like pull down is like an 81, and I was having him do drill work. Hey, you can't go on from knee drill until you hit 62. So at the safest constraint, right? You can't really screw that one up, right? You're on your knees. You can't hurt yourself there. You just can suck at it, or you can be a little bit better at it. Anyway, he got past that. And then after that, then it was target practice with a radar gun. So it'd be like, okay, now in this drill, you have to throw it 68 and then 73 and then 62. And when he had to drop down to that 62, it's infuriating, but it's simple, right? So just a side note, because I know you guys probably have some resources that would allow you to do something like that. Not everybody can, but just simple stuff like that can be so powerful.
But you're creating feel, which is amazing, right. Which is something Coach Flo and I, you can't teach feel. But I guess that's the way you're teaching it. I'd love to see how that works out.
You use the radar gun and try to help guys go up on their own pace, right? You got to learn. One thing we just brought up recently is like, I didn't understand what the radar gun really meant until I started throwing in front of it every day and understood what my feedback was, right? Because I may feel good one day and go to rip and I'm not where my numbers are. So something's off mechanically. Maybe I'm tired. Maybe I didn't get a good night's rest, right? But it gives me answers quicker to what's going on, right? And
but to Bergandi's point though, John, like on your worst days, you're like in balance and in sync better than most people, right? So for the rest of us, like, when we're not like on top of this shit, we don't fall into that. Like, I'll just go like my arm slot will change like 3 inches in a day if I'm not figuring, you know what I mean? So it's just like, it's in perspective,
Jeez, Cash, you got to check your shoulder out, man. You stop doing those kipping pull-ups and CrossFit.
Yes.
Hey, give me a break here. Give me a break.
He's got to be good at something, you know? Anyway, competitiveness, that idea, I really love that idea. Do each one of you guys have an instance that you felt like you learned where it was, like where you found it, you know, in the game? Because I've got a couple instances, and I
found it. You found it.
I mean,
John?
it's just it's more like when you realize, like, oh, okay, this is what it is. This is the fun part.
Isn't
right?
that kind of the thing, though? Is like, when do you figure out who you are as a pitcher, and then it's like, who are you as a human? And you know, good luck, guys.
Well, I know. I think on the baseball side, something that just immediately comes to mind is, you know, kind of a little bit of a background. But in high school, I was primarily an outfielder. And because I was 6'3", 6'4", and left-handed, you know, hey, let's just run that guy up there because he could be projectable on the mound. And, you know, and things were able to progress where I'm able to put myself in a situation in front of teams or colleges to then move to college baseball as a pitcher. So I think the tough part about it for me was that I go to my freshman year in college, and it's the first time in my entire life where I'm only pitching. And I really do believe I lost a sense of athleticism. You know, I was so used to running around the outfield, going to hit, you know, 2, 3 in the order, and then can come on the mound in the 6 or 7 just to close it out. And I spent more of my time maybe in catch play working on, you know, I'm trying to gain arm strength or follow through, be aggressive because I'm an outfielder. And then I get on the mound and compete. And so I think there was definitely a difficult year for me where I tell guys this, and this is why I really like to recruit players that, you know, that either play a different position, you know, are their high school shortstop or third baseman, and then also pitch, or, you know, maybe they play basketball. And so they're, you know, they don't spend a full 12 months of a year, you know, just completely devoted towards one sport, because I want the shortstop that pitches rather than the pitcher that plays shortstop. And that's the tough part in explaining, not the difficult part, but, you know, just trying to remind guys when they lose a sense of confidence or, you know, just feel on the mound. Let's get back to, you know, who you truly are, that athletic individual. So going back and relating it to kind of that competitive switch, my sophomore year, after a pretty poor freshman season, it's probably a week before season, and I'm still not, you know, getting it on the mound, and I'm getting really frustrated. Just naturally, all this being competitive, I'm getting frustrated with myself, and so I'm running around the outfield one day. We're in a scrimmage. We needed, some guy was either hurt or sick, I don't remember, but we needed an extra right fielder. And our college, you know, the coach was like, hey, just run out to right field. You're only going to play defense for these last few innings. So I go out and play right, and I make some pretty athletic plays, and realizing that when I'm in the outfield, you know, I'm actually throwing from a little bit lower of a slot than I am, you know, when I'm on the mound, when I'm pitching. And all of a sudden, I give a ton of credit to my pitching coach at the time, who's now the pitching coach at USC. But he comes to me and he's like, hey, why are you more athletic, you know, and why are you throwing harder in the outfield than you do when you compete on the mound? Let's come into the bullpen real quick. Vary your arm. I want you to, whatever you think your, you know, a sideways or a sidearm kind of arm slot is to you, throw from there. And what that allowed me to do was, I didn't know what I was doing. I knew what the feeling was like of, okay, being a little bit more athletic. But that all of a sudden allowed me to lose just that mindset of, okay, this is how you're supposed to pitch. And it regained my confidence again of, okay, here's the ball. I'm on the rubber, and I'm throwing from like an athletic slot. I don't care what my body looks like right now. And it helped me switch complete gears to just a competitive self. So I think probably that's kind of my moment where it just kind of the light bulb switched, which, you know, again, we've said this now a handful of times, you know, over the last hour, but it's about being who you are. And for me, the best way I was going to pitch was being extremely athletic, maybe a little unorthodox, but being athletic on the mound.
I think the way I found it was I caught my entire life. I only pitched for a year of my life just because it was a fun opportunity I was blessed with. But the first time I got on the mound, it was kind of just after I talked to a bunch of scouts, and I forgot how to hit. I just couldn't hit anymore, but I always had a good arm behind the plate. And one of the guys said, why don't you just try to throw one like you're throwing a guy out at second? Because that was something I prided myself on I was good at. And the first time off my mound is when I hit that special number 90, right? I was like, oh my gosh, so you're saying that I get to throw a guy out every single time from the mound? And then I think that's when it flipped for me. And then I started to develop it. It was that mentality of like, no one is going to touch the ball. And then like to Coach Flo is the athletic ability. If you're a catcher throwing somebody out, there's a lot of moving parts. So in my mind, if I tried to like, obviously I watched pitchers from receiving them all the time, but if I tried to mimic that, it was not explosive. It was slow. It was a long arm. It was not clean. But the second I got in my head, I'm like, okay, let's throw this dude out. And it was just this quick, short arm up, downhill, and it is explosive. So I agree with Flo. I think once I realized kind of the athletic ability that came behind it, I turned into this kind of a toolbox. I had long hair. I just thought nothing stunk, and I just could throw really hard, and it worked, you know. And you kind of like you is who you is. So I knew I could throw hard. I knew I could throw strikes, and I knew guys out. And then I just kind of carried it until I tore everything else in my elbow. So, yeah.
Well, and that last part is we've all done it. I mean, I don't know if Flo, if you've hurt yourself, but for me, it's like that last part. And this, I mean this to myself. You can speak for yourself, but it's like I just didn't have enough discipline and enough self-respect to say, hey, maybe don't throw through this pain right now, and you could probably figure it out over the long haul. Because I was just like, this game.
Yeah, I've never been taken out of a game in my life. When I tore my labrum in high school, I finished the inning before I came out. When I did the thing in my neck, I was rehabbing surgery, but when I did this thing in my elbow, I was pitching in front of a lot of important people, and they had to tell me I was done. They had to take the ball out of my hand. I was like, no, I'm fine. I'm good. My arm was like backwards this way. But I was like, I'm fine. Like, I'm doing this. Like, but yeah, I mean, I think that's when the mantra takes over though. Like, cause you're like, no, like I'm good at this. Don't take me out of my element. I'm here. Yeah. So, but yeah, the discipline, I tell Flo all the time. Cause I'm always like, hey, arm care, like what can we do? How can we make sure? And we're both very good at it. But I always joke like, guys, don't get this. You don't need this in your life. Your life will be better without the 9 months of doing this every day. Like you're going to be okay.
It just brings up weird emotions where I like literally heard the concept of like, you probably want to get Tommy John. Like that flew around for a while.
Oh, I hated that.
And I was
People
like,
still say that.
I'm like, what?
I've heard young kids say, yeah, I think I want to get Tommy John to throw harder. And it's like, or you can just do arm care every day. So you don't need to get it.
Exactly. Or you could just jump and skip the whole thing together and throw harder without it. Yeah, don't break your elbow throwing either, guys. Yeah, when I broke my elbow in the game, it was very 10 feet to the right. It was a whole thing, you know?
Goodness.
So I keep on hearing, I got to say this out loud because I keep on thinking it. So Doug Latta, I'm pretty sure he said like 80, it might have been 90%. So somewhere in that 80% and 90%, it's like, that's about all I can do. That last 10 to 20%, like that's on them. And that's that part of like, who are you and putting it into perspective and also understanding how that's going to play on the mound. You know, for me, you know, it's not necessarily being flawless. It's like understanding what those are and using those to your advantage, right? So if I can pitch pissed off, I can, but I'm going to throw 137 pitches. I'm going to have 12 Ks and 7 walks, right? And so when I don't pitch emotional like that, I just don't have to try so hard to get the same result. I'm not going to have the amount of Ks. but I'm not going to have the amount of walks, right? So I'm usually like a 1-to-1 guy. And when I am that, and when I learned how to be that, it was a lot easier to just stay in the place. Now, I go out on the mound right now. I can't tap into that guy. Why? Because I haven't prepared, right? That was a prepared version of myself, right? And I had gotten to that, and I'm a completely different person now, right? And you can talk about this, how guys evolve through their career, but essentially it just keeps coming back to, you know, this is why I talked about the pandemic stuff, making kids make decisions. This is the same stuff here. How are you going to compete, right? And this is for the people that are like, hey man, my coach is a dick, or my players, this person is in front of me, or that person is there. It's like, bro, like it has to come back to you. It has to come back to you. And that's not easy, but it has to come back to you. So it's just so like, for me, and I think this is why I harp on it so much, is it's simply that I don't see it very often. I don't see a lot of young people, and I'm as guilty as anybody, right? And that's probably where it's more personal for me, but I just don't see a lot of people asking themselves those questions enough, right? Who the heck are you? And lean into it, right? And those flaws, I heard this, and I'll leave it at this. This is I'll forever remember this. If you have a grandparent, okay, and they have lived their wonderful life, okay, and they have a peaceful death, however you imagine that, the things that you miss are going to be the weird quirks that person had. You're not like, gosh, they were like, you'll obviously remember their kindness and the good things, but you remember like, God, that son of a bitch. Remember when they used to do that to me? Gosh, and then you laugh about it, right? And so and if you can think about things like that and humanize it, it's a lot easier to accept the fact that, yeah, Cass, you're that psycho that doesn't shut up. And that's who you are, and like lean into that and make fun of yourself for it. Like have some, like that's how you combat that. Once you accept these things, who you are, now you can lean into them on the mound. How John's gonna talk to you when you're in the box, bro. Like what? And then you're gonna
I did that too. I'm guilty.
It was so much fun to watch people freak out.
But and then you have to also be the shortstop too. That's like, yeah, I gotta just like be okay with John being on the mound doing this shit. You know what I mean? And it just, that stuff, man, culture. It brings up the Minnesota MASH stuff. It all comes down to, if you're not tapping into these things as a player or as a coach, you can't even touch player development. You can't even touch skill acquisition, because it doesn't exist without these things.
Well, I know that Flo and I can both tap into it, and here's a quick little story. But so Flo and I, when we're out there, we're very fun. We're having a release going. But one day it was we did this simulated BP drill of a short mound, and Flo and I were the captains of each team, and we had to throw to the other team. We set the radar gun up there. I think the first inning, Flo and I were kind of throwing like a little faster than normal BP. But by like the third inning, Flo and I are both dripping in sweat. Flo's chewing out hitters. I'm talking ish back to them. I think my average fastball, we had our statistics and analytic crew doing it. I was sitting around 111 miles an hour from the 45 feet. Flo was sitting around 109. Flo's curveball is at 92. Flo was spitting at kids. I was just ripping. And it was just like at the end of it, like the guys were like, well, what was that about? And Flo and I are just steaming because we can tap into it. We knew that we want to get our guys better. But also, when I saw Flo would go out there and rip 3 curves in a row at 94, I'm like, I'm ripping them at 95. Like, because that's just who we are as athletes and competitors. And that's something that showed our pitchers too. Like, hey, if another dude's on the mound and he's out competing you, turn it on. Like, get locked in, come back in, like go back out there, shut it down. But that was just, it's a fun little thing that you can just like, Flo and I will be out there laughing. We're on the Rapsodo. He's watching the guy. I'm watching the guy. I'm just paying attention, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, Flo, Bergandi, can you guys throw in this drill? And all of a sudden it's switched, and we're competing, because that's just who we are at heart.
What you guys are so positive. You guys know how to spin it. What pisses you off? When do you just love on your guys? When do you love on them?
We love on our guys. That's seriously, that's one thing that with our culture.
How can I get you to blow up though? If somebody was gonna just absolutely make you blow up, what would you do? How could I get under your skin?
Walk in front of somebody's bullpen. What do you got?
Yes. I mean, there's a million things, but you got to put it in perspective. Like, what's the real point behind it? You know, like you only need to get to that point if it's extremely necessary, and because it's the well-being of our culture. You don't want to dive into it and rip it apart. But let's say someone's throwing a bullpen and someone's doing driveline balls this way.
Yeah.
And another guy's there. I mean, things that will never happen in our program for many reasons, but it takes a lot for both of us, because we understand our guys. We know each and how they work. We know certain guys you can talk to certain ways. Coach Flo does a great job working with guys in their arm slots and saying like, hey, maybe be more athletic, drop it down, and talking to them in ways where it's not rude, it doesn't come off hasteful, but certain guys he can get on because that's their coaching style.
Yeah, I think exactly right. Two things, Coach Bergandi. I think you have to understand who you're tapping into, which player you're communicating with. And so, you're gonna get being around them every single day, over those first 3-4 weeks. A lot of times I'm evaluating just the type of competitor, especially those new players are. And then two, how can I speak with them? There's certain guys that when I want to just, grip onto them and just, what are you shaking? What are you doing? I might have to approach them face to face, no more than 2 feet away, even go to the extent just, lightly grab him on the shoulder and just, peacefully speak to him. And hey, listen, I am really upset with you right now, but X, Y, and Z, here's how we're going to move forward. Yeah. Just as there's other guys, that are out there that, them, you have a really close relationship with them. And more importantly, that they're going to respond in a positive way, or at least have a hunch that they'll have a better likelihood of responding when you can get a little bit more vocal in terms of your frustration with them. And for me, I think to be honest, that's where I've over the course of now, 4 or 5 years coaching at this level, the most frustrated I've been in certain instances. It's not the initial conversation. It's not, you're doing something, silly or dumb and now I'm mad. It's not an immediate reaction. It's okay. There was an immediate reaction where we handled it maybe behind closed doors, or we spoke and at maybe like a lower volume, and you continue to do, what we addressed, or, we bring up the mentality of your game and things that you need to do a better job controlling because they are controllables, and you're still not that's when, okay, we addressed it and you're still, having a difficult time with it. That's where I'll become frustrated with our, and it doesn't happen often. We're very lucky to be around, like Coach Bergandi is saying, what Coach Hill's been able to do here in terms of the on the field success, sure, but more importantly, the success of the culture of this program. We're typically bringing in pretty good apples. So, we're not dealing with, terrible individuals too often. So that's another positive with it. But that's probably the few times that I've been very frustrated if that comes about.
Well, I think it's tough and the reason I ask is because if you're, you want to win at the level that you want to win at, you have to have guys with character at unprecedented level, and you're already talking about that. But then, right, so you're getting kids who are already the cream of the crop, and then it's that next step, right? And so I think it's interesting because I think what now we're just getting into like, oh, this is a little bit about where you lie on the leadership scale, and like, are you how transformational versus transactional are you? And I think when I think about I'm getting that. I guess I was a little bit more leading into something than I thought I was, but it's just that a lot of the people that led me just would bark, and so I'm always looking for like, there must be an appropriate time to freak the heck out. And it's like, well, no, there's a lot of people that actually can lead and manage people in a way that's just like, yeah, man, if we don't win a game this year, it's going to be real brutal, but like, me getting pissed off about it doesn't necessarily help us not do that. So,
well, think about it. Like if let's say you were pitching poorly and your coach comes out and starts chewing you out for pitching poorly. Isn't your first thought was, dude, I was already telling myself this?
Yeah. It just depends because so I had a catcher, both my catchers would just lay into me like, bro, what's up? And I was good at doing that. So if this is the thing is like, you guys are creating an authentic relationship with your kids. And so that's the one thing with John is like, that's not in his DNA to like sit and bark at kids. It doesn't sound like it's in your DNA either. And I think it might be a little bit more in my DNA, but I think the point is to like, be honest with that. And that's what I think is important is like, and I tell people this all the time. I'm going to be the first one to admit, hey, I'm out of line right now. Give me a break right now. And I think that that's really helpful for me anyway. So anyway, I wasn't going anywhere specifically, but I think I appreciate that, by the way, that it's habits, right? Matt, Flo, you're talking about like,
Absolutely.
I'm trying to create good habits, right? And so you're going to make some mistakes along the way, and you're probably you might screw up a habit 2-3 times, but like at some point I have to talk to you like a grown person, and these things don't work in real life. You just lose your job, right? You just lose friendships. You lose
100%. And that's where even letting players know, prior to getting to campus during the recruiting process of, they need to know who you are and what your expectations are going to be. And I tell them, hey, listen, guys, I'm not, maybe it's because we're all part of this younger generation of coaches and we're not too far removed. And in reality, we're part of this generation that Cass, you had brought up, kind of has created maybe a little bit of a negative stereotype over the last decade or so. But the biggest thing being is, hey, listen, how I'm going to communicate with you is ask any one of our players. Are there going to be those few instances during the fall, the spring, the season where I'm going to, get loud and get vocal because I am frustrated? Absolutely. And just like Coach Bergandi has seen when I've done those in certain instances, sometimes I've pulled a player aside and said, you know what, like I could have handled that maybe a little bit differently, but I just want to let you know I'm doing this because I care for you. And it just got to the point that I needed to vent almost. I needed to it almost, the reason why I'm apologizing, it was almost more for me than it was for you. So that's why I'm apologizing. But the biggest thing being is, like I said, that might happen 2 or 3 times a year, not often. But the biggest thing being is I tell our guys, expect just real conversations. And Coach Bergandi knows when we meet with our pitchers, for instance, every 2 weeks in our one-on-one or 2-on-1 meetings, when it's the 3 of us in there behind closed doors in the office, there's times where I'm okay with having a little bit of maybe what's perceived as uncomfortable conversations. And it's not a vocal war. It's just, hey, player so-and-so, here's where you're at. Here's what you need to do to improve. As of right now, you're the odd man looking into the bulk of innings. And you'll sit there and, I didn't say it. I said it just in the tone that I just presented it to you guys, where they sit there and maybe it's a little bit more approachable, or maybe that allows them to ask more questions. But they know, hey, listen, I'm not going to maybe be the screamer and the yeller, but anticipate real conversations. And I'm doing that, or we're doing that, to hopefully better your career so we can move you on to professional baseball.
Yeah. I mean, it's the little things too. Like we always talk about, the way we do anything is the way we do everything. And the way I've coached, the way I've brought up, I'm very kind of hard-nosed. Do things right, you do it right every time. So I remember, I think it was the 3rd day in the office, Flo and I made a piece of paper, we printed it out, and we took pictures of the locker room. We said, this is how your locker will look, this is how your locker will not look, with a list of rules. And we were both very stern about that the entire year. There were times Flo and I were having a ping pong game, and a player would walk in, and I would look at him and I would say, you better clean your locker right now. Like, this is disgraceful. And it wasn't an attack on him. And it was just an adult conversation like, hey, man, you need to clean your stuff up. You got to figure it out a little bit. And those are conversations that are had because of the culture that we've developed, this adult conversation, guys talking to each other. It's not like we walked into the locker, ripped everything off the ground, threw it on the ground, wrote a little note and said, pick it up. It was, hey, you clean it up right now. Then you can go out to the field. Take care of your stuff. So, but it's like everything I'll say until I die. Everything goes back to culture. It's how you do anything is how you're going to do everything.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, I want to play for you guys right now. I want to go.
Go ahead, come on back, man.
You throwing 112 miles an hour and
no, I was
just striking out dudes.
We were at like 30 feet, and it was just like our catchers were like catching it like this. Curveballs are just
sure.
No, but that's what we like to do over there.
Well, and I think there's something else that goes to it. Like you showed, I think showing the like animal side of your competitiveness to your players is just a different thing, right? Especially when they know that you have it. Like, oh, dang, like, Coach Florer used to be a dude. Like, he used to came out and just rip.
Hey, he threw a no-hitter in the WCC. Coach Florer is a dude.
Yeah, exactly, right? But you hear it, right? But then when you see it, it's a whole different thing. When you watch video or someone does it in front of you, it's like it's a different level of respect that goes through it. So, it's hats off to you guys. You're doing a great job with the culture. I'm preaching. I'm in line with everything that you're saying. It sounds like a blast over there.
It's a good time. The amount of ping pong games that are won and lost, and I mean, it's a great time over in our. Very lucky to have the facility over there, and it's just. I mean, every day Coach Flo has an office that looks out onto the field, and the war room with myself, Willie Gaines, and Ray Mack. We have the same view, and it's like every day we're like, wow, like this is what we get to do every day. So why don't we treat it like with the most level 10 energy that we can every day? When a guy walks in and a guy walks right by our offices, I mean, you guys would crack up. We are like verbally harassing him with hellos. How was your day? How did you sleep? How was the workout? Because we want them to feel like they're part of our family. Like, it's funny, the first week we'll always talk about the freshmen will walk by with their head down and kind of horse blinders really fast because they do not know what's going on. Yeah. And then the senior walks in and they're stopping in every door. They're saying hi to everybody. But I mean, yeah, culture, it's huge for us. That's how we thrive.
Yeah. I just want to say this because I haven't given a shout out here, and Coach Flo is just getting all of it. But just a testament to, like, this isn't bullshit. This isn't bull crap. First thing I did when I moved to San Diego was emailed almost every coach in the area, and I was just saying, hey, I want to pick your brain. I want to know what you're doing, and he flipped it around and is like, I want to know what you're doing, and he didn't have to say that, and nobody else did either. And so it's just like, this is what's so fun having conversations with you guys, is because this is what it is. I kind of, in the briefing that we had yesterday, it's like, hey, there's some hot buttons in the private sector versus, academic, however you want to talk about it, but like, we can make a very good case that college is a dumb idea. But at the same time, if you get a program that does it right, it could be the smartest idea ever, right? And so it's great that, maybe not everybody is having conversations with pitching coaches and college coaches, but hopefully everybody is. And hopefully we start to do this more. I think it was, John, it was the, oh my gosh, guy. Anyway, one of our guests also brought up the fact that this is also harder for hitting coaches to do, apparently. And I would totally agree with that. And so I'm glad that we can come at it from a side where we are having a conversation, but for the record, okay, the people that are watching, like, this, we need more of this, right? So if you're a coach, like, why are you not having these conversations? When I was in Minnesota, it was always, it's also competitive. And it's like, man, you can try as hard as you want to be Cutternation. You guys aren't going to be Cutternation. Just like we can try as hard as we can to run a program like you guys, and we won't. So it's just like this whole idea that this information is so valuable that we need to compete against each other for it. I think people just miss the point. So anyway, there's going to be things like Moneyball, and there's always going to be, the people that really they're working hard and also running into a little bit of luck. But at the end of the day, this is what's going to push everything forward. And we all know it, but we got to start doing it more. So anyway, thanks guys, because this is unbelievably valuable for everybody.
Yeah, I think this has done a really good job of just showing your side of the program with a great conversation. I mean, like I said, I've already committed to the University of San Diego. I will be in the 2021 season. Maybe come out of the who knows,
4.0. You guys,
yeah, we'd love to get you in there.
I'd love that.
I'm graduated 4.0. I'm not sure if there's one more year of eligibility. I'm not sure. Maybe
you can get GA. You can get your master's.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. Anyway, so I don't want to eat up too much more of your guys' time. We've been killing it. We got like an hour and 20 minutes right now, but this has been really, really good. Do you have anything else that you'd like to just say, or anything you want to touch on before you guys go?
Yeah, I think, the only thing to add, and it's not a lot, but it's exactly what kind of Cass, had just brought up, and, sending this thing off where, again, with hopefully kind of this movement of younger coaches, and I was talking about it. I was on a podcast yesterday talking about this as well, but
Which podcast?
Being able, a gentleman by the name of Josh Rudd, who runs, kind of a college recruiting service, we'll call it, out in Florida, and was able to build a relationship with him, networking about players in the past. But, something that was really neat was talking about just, and the four of us are absolutely, this is the fun part about this conversation. The four of us are part of this core group of younger coaches that are hopefully leaving a print on, the younger generation that's going to continue to follow. And point being is, it's all about education. It's all about learning. And if you're a coach, in my opinion, I don't really like to even say that it's a coaching role. It's a teaching role. And what are the best teachers? What are the best educators, top to bottom, whatever, I guess, goal of yours or, job that you might have, those best educators are typically the best learners, right? I mean, those guys or women are out there, trying to advance their knowledge for, in our case, the game or whatever subject they're trying to study, so that they can then in return, give it back to the community itself. So anyways, long-winded, but, like I said, always fun to speak with you guys, and we're looking forward to coming back out to the new facility. It's going to be so great to see. And goodness gracious, I feel like whenever we're able to get around one another, these conversations do end up taking an hour or two, which is a good thing. And that's just because we're word vomiting, everything that, that we feel so passionate about, which is all educational at the end of the day. So again, just want to thank you guys. It's been a blast.
Yeah, guys. I mean, it was an absolute pleasure. I mean, Flo and I were joking about, we were excited for this. Like, Cass, when you came into the field one day, we still have a picture you drew up on Flo's board of a guy striding down the mountain. It's still up there.
That's cool.
It's just because we loved it. We love every opportunity we have with you guys. I saw the Instagram picture of the outdoor thing being built. That looks phenomenal. Hope you guys didn't get hurt in the process.
No, we got it finished. We got new lighting
Awesome.
So we'll have even we got better camera angles because we got some new equipment to help us with that. So it's pretty exciting. We're pumped. We've done some spring cleaning. We're just people are chomping at the bit to get in. We're chomping at the bit ready to get it going. And because I think that a lot of our clients and the people who follow us understand this is a process. It takes a long time. And we've been trying to put the message out, give yourself 6 weeks to really go through. You're probably going to go through some weird tendonitis stuff. It's probably going to happen. You probably haven't been on your routine like you're supposed to. You're probably not used to ripping like you want to. So be smart about it. Go through it like you're supposed to, and don't go play a tournament next weekend. What are you doing? Gosh, it's crazy that you have to say stuff like that. You know what I mean? Because we were talking to a guy the other day and he said it. So anyway, appreciate it, guys. Thank you. We will definitely do this again. This is amazing. You guys check them out, USD. I'm sure go over to the email section of the coach's contact, and I'm sure you can get a hold of anybody through there.
Thank you again, guys. It was an absolute
Thanks, guys.
All right. And we are